Welcome to All About Money on HK IBC. I'm Chloe Finn. Hong Kong has been grappling with a virtual asset fraud case over the past 2 weeks, as crypto exchange called JPEX is accused by regulators of operating without a license and misleading investors. So far, 12 people have been arrested over the case for promoting the platform, including social media influencers and key opinion leaders, and over 2,000 people have filed complaints against JPEX, with the total assets involved climbing to 1.5 billion Hong Kong dollars as of September the 27th. It also marked the largest financial fraud case in the city, while representing one of the most high-profile law enforcement actions in the cryptocurrency sector. So what lessons can we learn from such a downfall, and will investors be able to recover certain losses? We're joined by technology lawyer Joshua Chu and Emil Chan, co-chair of Hong Kong Digital Finance Association, to analyze the case. So welcome to our show, Emil and Joshua.
Thank you for having us.
First thing first, what are your main takeaways from this development so far?
I think it came at the JPEX, the enforcement came at the right time, because Hong Kong have only recently passed our legislation where we basically roped in virtual assets trading platform within the auspices of SFC. Regulations alone cannot lead to a perfect world, of course, and it requires a combination of both law enforcement as well as education at the end of the day.
Yeah, what about you, Emil? What is your main takeaway?
Well, it's disclosed the limitation of the current regulatory system. Yeah, because the current one, they're focusing on the traditional finance, but crypto is a new thing. So rather than segregation of duty among different regulators, we have to find out a consolidated one, so that when there's an incident, they can take faster action. They can tell the same story to general public.
Right. Now, one of the criticisms so far that we have is like the SFC, the regulator, has been acted too late, because as we know, the FCC has put the firm JPEX into its alert list since last year, but it didn't act until this year. It defended itself, saying that it was also waiting for the anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing ordinance came into full effect to give its power to enforce such actions. But should such losses be reduced if they acted earlier?
I think at the end of the day, fraud is fraud. You don't need to have AMLO to basically say that you need to take law enforcement actions, of course. What has actually happened is that we've seen what appears to be the platform itself have taken some very controversial as well as fishy actions ever in the past month. As the SFC have noted, they didn't. The first warning came out without name and shaming JPEX as a platform itself, but they have even escalated the situation in the immediate month right after the 7th of August circular that the SFC have came out, which has led to law enforcement action. Keeping in mind, legislation alone does not stop crime. The reason crime happened is because people break the law, and this has always happened. But what I do agree is that this is a very good opportunity for regulators and law enforcement to gain valuable experience so that they can have quicker reaction time in the future as to what to do. What we are seeing, I would go so far and say that the legislations are there, the regulatory and legal enforcement arms are there. It's now about how to build up those channels to have interdepartment cooperation as well as international cooperation. Because like any transnational crime, and keeping in mind this is an Internet of Things scenario, you need multinational law enforcement joint task forces to tackle an issue. For example, when we have major drug busts that's between Australia and Hong Kong, what will usually happen is that we have joint task forces between the Australian Federal Police as well as the Hong Kong Police Force. That has happened in the past, and I think that the same system will be used in the future in order to safeguard the financial center in Hong Kong as well. The other issues that we have yet to see, but I'm quite keen on seeing, is how in the United States, for example, again, it's not something that happens overnight, but they have built up a system where you are able to blacklist crypto. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of lawyers actually recently commenting saying that because it's crypto and because of the structure of the organization, it's very hard to recover the assets. It's absolutely not true. Those statements actually show that we have a huge gap in education behind the legal profession as well. Because anything in crypto, as we have been demonstrated with a number of high-profile hacking in different crypto platforms, can be recovered over time, which I'm happy to talk about in details.
And I know that you're representing some of the victims from this case as well. We can talk about how to recover certain losses later on. But
absolutely.
Before that, I also want to know your style. Do you think the SFC acted too late?
Yes or no? Okay. As a whole, of course, the reaction is too slow, for sure. But to me, I think they have their concern because it's first thing. It's a new system.
Regime, yeah.
Yeah, new regime, and you know the history of the latest regime. I think we still remember a couple of years ago when they passed the law, they restricted retail transaction. So at the end of the day,
to protect the investors, basically, right?
Well, but they protecting them by not allowing them to do anything. Of course, it's protective. But if they cannot do anything, at the end of the day, most of the crypto players leave Hong Kong. They left Hong Kong, and then at the end of the day, they realize that, oh no, this is not the right law. So the Hong Kong government become very vocal and asking everybody, and they even declare that they want to make Hong Kong the international crypto or digital asset trading center. So in such a way, it's a 180-degree U-turn. So how could SFC and the other regulators cope with this big change? So it's such a short period of time. Okay, they have no choice but using some measurement or allowed the player to have one more year transaction without getting a proper license. So this gives the room, on one hand, the scammer, to fool the system, and on the other hand, as Joshua said, they are learning, slowly, and it's not enough time for them to get prepared. Right. So to me, if you ask whether they are slow, yes, it is very slow. But it's slow not only because SFC's respond. It's slow because as a whole, the Hong Kong government did not treat crypto as a serious business.
The attitude changed pretty fast as well, because last year, during the FinTech Week 2022, we have the policy statement to support such industries' development. And then more investors are realizing that Hong Kong is aiming to become a crypto hub as well. But now, you mentioned about the grace period, the 12 months grace period is actually one of the loopholes many people are looking into as well, because JPEX is also perhaps taking this as one of its advantage to woo more investors to promote its products as well. So how do you see such a loophole? How would such a structure also maybe pose some regulatory ambiguity in some level? Should we fix this?
Well, to me, because I'm working from the banking industry for long, and then the HKMA has a strategy called regulatory sandbox. So whenever there's a new product, new service, new players coming into the picture, so they will allocate a special environment, let them to trial. So while they are doing under monitoring, the lawmaker or the regulation, the policy maker, they can observe and upgrade or even introduce a new regime for that particular business. So it is already applied in HKMA and also insurance authority. Right. In this case, SFC, they are using this grace period rather than a regulatory sandbox. So if there's a regulatory sandbox, it's easy. This company or this OTC or this exchange, they are in the sandbox. So in the sandbox means it's trying. They are not fully function. So everybody understand. They may not be fully protected. So take part in this scheme. But now, they at the 2 weeks ago, they said, oh, I do not want to disclose it because I don't want to give a wrong message for general public. This is, to me, unprofessional.
And this week, they reversed their stance basically by revealing the list of those companies have formally made the applications. Now, Joshua, I also want to get your thought on how to trace those key personnel behind this whole case as well, because so far the key personnel remain unknown. Is also due to its operational structure that it did not have a chief executive, and instead it operated as an anonymous, decentralized operation where every member contributed to operations and decisions. I mean, how would you view such a structure, this kind of decentralized structure, and also the risks involved? And can we trace the key personnel behind?
I will have to digress with what my learned friend have said here about acting too slowly, because at the end of the day, even without the grace period, fraud is fraud. Money laundering is money laundering, and this crime, even if we take the grace period out of the picture, it doesn't debar people from breaking the law and misrepresenting to the public about applying or have applied or even have obtained a license in Hong Kong. So I think the laws are already there. It's just about application, and because of this very fact, I think even before, I would go so far as before AMLO, if we had known that this platform is actually a scam platform, for example, the appropriate disclosure order applications could have been made. Now, very interestingly, I disagree with what a lot of lawyers saying that you can't identify the people because of it's supposedly a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. Because at the end of the day, you still need a person to open bank accounts. And what we have seen here is that they have entered into advertisement campaign contracts, they have hired endorsers, and those endorsers have actually came out on record and say they have received money. Even on these two bases, we already have enough lead to basically tell us which court we should be going to apply for what we call knowledge pharmacal or banker's trust disclosure application, which is where the court basically ordered the relevant banking institutions to say, we know that you have monetary transactions with the platform, please disclose the transactions, as well as what we will have is called ancillary disclosure order as well, where we basically get the accounts opening forms, which will basically paint an individual behind the scene. Cybercrime or wire fraud is nothing new. It has been around for 30 years. And we have seen certain jurisdictions with very sophisticated legal professionals working where we're able to actually even geolocate the perpetrators by basically painting a very detailed timestamps of everything taking place and how to basically obtain the relevant pieces of evidence. That is something that we are working to build and will be built over time, of course. So I do not think that anyone is beyond the reach of the law. Of course, once you are embroiled within a scam, unfortunately, you have to spend that money to do the tracing. Because one of the things that victims have to be reminded of is that just reporting the crime to the police, first, you need to know if it's the right law enforcement authorities. Have you done so in all relevant jurisdictions? The second thing is also be reminded that there's no such thing as a free lunch. It's not law enforcement job to actually return your stolen money to you. At the end of the day, you as a victim still have to go to the court to apply for a court order to return those frozen assets to your accounts.
Right, the case is also still being investigated as well, and it's about time and whether we will eventually trace back those key personnel as well. So hold that thought. For now, we will take a short break, but coming up next, we'll discuss more on how to recover certain losses and what else can authorities do to enhance its efforts to regulate this sector. So don't go away. Welcome back to All About Money on HK IBC. I'm Chloe Zhen. Joining us tonight are technology lawyer Joshua Chu and Emil Chan, co-chair of Hong Kong Digital Finance Association, to analyze the latest alleged fraud case with cryptocurrency exchange JPEX. So welcome both. Emil, Emil, let's start with you. What else do you think authorities can do to prevent such cases from happening again?
As Joshua said, the laws are there already. Now is up to which department, up to how those authorities can work together. My opinion is that at the moment, the OTC operator, so-called the money exchanges, they are unlicensed. Why? Because if it is money-to-money exchange, is under the monitoring of the Customs and Excise Department. But their restriction is that they can only take action or are responsible to those money-to-money. So what is USDT? So the law is still not passed. So I mean the policy from the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. So it's scheduled to be released by I think June of 2024.
Okay.
So in such a case, according to the Customs and Excise Department, it is not their job, okay, to observe, the activities carrying on in the OTC or the money exchanges. So in such a case, I strongly believe that if we can use the AMLO to give either the Customs Department or the SFC or the HKMA to enforce that law. So that whenever there are money flow in and out of the system, so Joshua, you mentioned that the individual has to open a bank account. So if something happens, I can trace after that individual. But under the OTC, they do not need such an account. So if they are not observed by any regulators, so that's a loophole. So that we must enforce it and make sure that everybody moving money in and out of these OTC system, there must be a record. If there's a record, there's a sensor in the system so that they can take earlier action or the right measurement to respond to this incident.
Right. So maybe we can ramp up our regulations on such OTC stores as well. But what else do you think should be done? Is there a need, for example, to set up a dedicated committee to coordinate efforts from different departments and then to react to things more efficiently? What do you think, Joshua?
No, what I think is I disagree with the idea that we need more laws because you can't basically legislate your way to a perfect world. What I do actually believe is that in today's, the 21st century, it's time for law enforcement. So there's two aspects to law enforcement. There's law enforcement and crime prevention, which is what we're focusing on, the latter right now. Crime prevention, and keeping in mind, OTC company is not above existing money laundering or fraud laws. Keeping in mind, the arrests have been made against operator of OTC companies already. So the laws are actually there. The question is, how do you provide law enforcement with adequate resources to basically to uphold the components of crime prevention? And this is where I think newer technologies come into play. Yes. Because we can use things like one of the companies I'm watching, listed companies I'm also working with right now, works on artificial intelligence. And we do have the capabilities to enable law enforcement agencies to have the ability to basically monitor market data in order to predict where crime might be happening. We cannot substitute law enforcement at the end of the day, but what we can do is provide the tools to law enforcement so that they know where to look, observe, and intercept as appropriate. So artificial intelligence actually have a huge part to play. And Hong Kong has actually announced a policy that it's actually under the 14th five-year plan that the Hong Kong government came out and say, we want to be the leading crypto hub in Asia. And for you to do that, you also need the leading regulatory capabilities as well. And the 14th five-year plan is actually not all about blockchain or crypto. It's actually about the idea of turning Chinese cities into smart cities concept. And blockchain, Web3 technologies is only a small piece of the puzzle to realizing the smart city concept dream that the Chinese government have.
Right. So so you mean maybe we can observe more of the, for example, the data, for example, on the transactions, then we can see whether there's any potential.
Using the right tool, technically, HKMA has such a program. So 12 months campaign, okay, to promote RegTech. And I personally get involved in such a plan. So the tools are there, but it's not within the right department now. So they have to join force so that everybody use the same set of tools and using the same standard so that Hong Kong can work faster, react faster, and then, as Joshua said, take advantage over these whole initiative.
And we are seeing huge regulatory interest in applying technologies as well. I noticed this because I also teach the CPD courses to fellow lawyers on the application of Web3 technologies. And a lot of the students, attendees that comes, that's why I have to say good things about regulators, I suppose, actually came from HKMA and SFC.
Right. So actually, we're going to have the Let's Code discussion next month, and hopefully authorities can take such advice and look into such potential efforts as well. And speaking of now, many investors are worrying how can they recover certain losses. Do you think at this stage they could still recover their losses as well? What would you advise investors do for those affected investors do now at this stage?
Absolutely. I think engaging the right professions with the right skill set is of the utmost importance. Because if you go to a traditional law firm with an aging lawyer that have never even touched a computer, it's going to be a hopeless cause to begin with. Fortunately, my firm at Howson actually already have started representing a number of victims to the JPEX saga. And we are putting the latest of our industry skill set and technology, a combination of all things in order to basically recover the assets. We have done crypto asset recovery cases before, and I can actually say that the recovery rate is actually much higher than paper currency for wire fraud cases.
All right, that's interesting. So there are still hopes for the investors as well. What do you think, Emil? What do you think investors can do at this stage? And earlier, the JPEX also announced its DAO dividend plan, and using that is not a good idea for investors to further engage with the exchange, any activities further. So what should they do now?
Well, DAO, what does it mean? It's a community. They work together, and then they promote one idea using technology to secure their interest. But the so-called DAO in this scam, they do not have such a right. So it is not the right way to trust, somebody who fooled you already, and then you being fooled the second time. So in such a case, they have to team up together. Maybe they form a true community so that they share their knowledge. So if one party manage to recover a portion of their investment, so the other can follow, or they can join force, and then they can look for the representative, or the lawyers, or whoever, then the lawmaker, so that they can help them as a whole, rather than they're doing it on their own. Yeah.
I would say that they should really seek legal and regulatory advice before agreeing to any plan, because essentially, if you study the terms carefully, not giving legal advice at this stage, of course, to the public. It might constitute as a waiver of a number of their rights. So even if they actually have a very strong case for recovery, by basically falling into certain trappings, they could have accidentally, without knowing, waived their legal recourse. That it's otherwise they could have recovered through the legal system.
Absolutely.
And what about, for example, the other people involved in this case, for example, KOLs and celebrities? Should they also be given some sort of access to verify the platform's operations and legitimacy before they continue promoting certain products? What do you think that they should also be cautious about?
Well, celebrity endorsements have always come with certain liability. And unfortunately, they're actually one of the first people that you can law enforcement can actually catch because they're on the ground. But they actually, I would say that they actually hold key information that are quite useful for the entire case. For example, we do know that they have, or they at least self-purported that they have received money, monetary compensation for their efforts from the platform. So they actually have the key information needed in order to do assist with investigation or even disclosure. They could have actually taken a number of actions that could have preserved the assets of affected stakeholders, such as seeking urgent asset freeze order in relevant jurisdiction. And that would have been a very strong, compelling piece of chip to have for either a bind over negotiation with the law enforcement, or at least mitigation if they're ever charged and found guilty. But we haven't seen that. It's still in the early stages, of course. We don't know what sort of, are they going to do more than just holding press conferences, of course.
Right. Thank you very much for all of your insights today. That's Mr. Joshua Chu, technology lawyer, and Mr. Emil Chan, co-chair of Hong Kong Digital Finance Association. And thank you for watching All About Money. We'll be back next Sunday night. So until the next time, please take care.